Hey there. So it's an election year, right? Everybody knows that. So what does that mean? How do presidential elections impact the housing market? So let's break this down. But first, let me tell you where we're getting the source of our information. Bankrate, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, the National Association of Realtors, or NAR, and Freddie Mac. So we'll start out with a quote by Lisa, who is the chief economist at Bright MLS. And she says, historically, the housing market doesn't tend to look very different in presidential election years compared to other years. So that's good. That's good to hear, Lisa. Thanks for sharing that with us. But let's dive into the data. And so, what we'll start with is home sales. So, this is volume. How many homes are selling? So, home sales went up after 9 of the last 11 presidential elections. In election years, there's a slight slowdown in sales in November, but they tend to bounce back fast and climb the next year. So, we'll chart that out. So, here we're looking at historical of the entire nation, US annual existing home sales. So, that's the number of homes for sale going back to 1980 when you had Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan running. And you can see that home sales, the volume went down. And then in 1984, when it was Ronald Reagan and Mondale, the volume went up. And then again, fast forward to 1988, and you have Bush versus Dukakis, and we see the number of home sales went down. And then ever since then, the number of home sales have gone up. So that's a really interesting graph for me to look at with you. By the way, if you'd like any of this material, just please reach out to me. I'll have my phone number at the very end so you can text or call. So that was home sales, the number of home selling. Let's look at the mortgage rates. And we can see here that mortgage rates decreased slightly leading up to 8 of the last 11 presidential elections. So mortgage rates have historically come down just a little bit from July to November. And again, we'll chart this out. In 1980, again, it was Carter and Reagan, and you had really high inflation and interest rates. Look at that; they were 12 to 14% that year. So going up must have been very painful. And then you can see they came down in 1984. And then moving beyond that, for the most part, you're just seeing these slight changes and mostly going down. So I think that's a really interesting look at historical interest rates during presidential years. Let's talk about home prices. So home prices went up after 7 of the last 8 presidential elections. So prices generally follow the trend of what's already happening in the market, and they usually rise even in election years. So looking at this, the only one you see where the home prices went down, the median sales price, was during 2008. And if you remember, that was the mortgage meltdown. Banks started the market started slowing down, and if I remember right, like 2006, 2007, I think we were, by the end of 2007, we were in full-fledged panic. By 2008, we were bailing out banks. And so you see that home prices went down in 2008, but again, take that with the historical backdrop of the Great Recession, and it makes sense. So we see home prices go up in election years, which is very interesting. So we'll close it out by saying presidential elections only have a small and temporary impact on the housing market. If you have questions, let's connect. We're here for you. Call or text today 425-984-8013 or leave your comments below. I hope you liked this little information. And again, we can get all this data to you if you want it. Take care.